Hello and welcome back to this channel. In this video, we're going to be learning about loops in Java. First, we'll try to understand what a loop even means. Let's say I want to write a program to print all the numbers from 1 till 100. I can do something like that by just using println statements. For example, over here, I'm just using println statements to print the numbers from 1 till 6. And I just need to add 94 other println statements to print all numbers from 1 till 100. You can already see that this is going to be very inefficient and very tiring. You can't keep adding println statements, and this is exactly where we use loops. The main idea of a loop is to repeat executing a block of code as long as a particular condition is true. We can use this to execute a particular block of code how many ever times we want. Using a loop, we can just keep executing the same println statement 100 times to print all numbers from 1 till 100. It makes things way easier for us. In Java, there are three main types of loops. We have while loops, do while loops, and for loops. In this video, I'm only going to be talking about while loops and do while loops. But before we look at the syntax for a while loop, we'll look at a simplified version of a while loop. Like I've told you before, any loop keeps executing a particular block of code as long as a particular condition is true. The condition and the block of code are the main parts of a loop. Even in a while loop, the condition and the block of code are the main parts of the loop. We'll try to understand exactly how Java is going to repeat this block of code. First thing we're going to do is we're going to check the condition. For us to execute the block of code even once, the condition has to be true. If the condition is true, we're going to move on to the block of code. And then we're going to execute the block of code. So this could be a println statement, this could be something that declares a variable, this could be anything. Once we execute the block of code, we go back to the condition. We check the condition again, and if the condition is again true, we go back to the block of code. Basically, as long as the condition is true, we keep executing this block of code. Now let's say I go back to the condition, but now the condition is false. When this is the case, we ignore this block of code and we just move on to the rest of the program. This is the main functioning of a while loop, and really other loops as well. Now we're going to look at the syntax for the while loop. When you're creating a while loop, you're going to first add the keyword while. This shows you're using a while loop. And then you're going to add round brackets and parentheses. Now in your round brackets, you're going to add whatever condition or conditions you want to check for. As long as this condition is true, your block of code keeps getting executed. And the block of code is added in the parentheses. And it's honestly just simple English. While this condition is true, this block of code keeps getting executed. Now we'll practice using this format by creating a simple while loop. Let's say I want to create a while loop to just print the word hello. I'm going to add a println statement to print the word hello. So I added a println statement in the parentheses because I want to keep printing the word hello. And I want to add a condition in these brackets. We'll add a simple condition. Maybe something like 5 is greater than 3. So this condition is obviously true. I'm basically saying while this condition is true, I'm going to keep printing this word hello. When I run this program, you're going to notice that something weird is going to happen. Java is going to keep printing hello. It's not going to stop. Now this is what's called an infinite loop. If you look at this, this condition will always be true. Unlike what I've shown before, this condition will never be false. Meaning Java is going to keep executing the statement and keep printing the word hello. The loop never ends. It's an infinite loop. So we definitely have a problem with the current while loop. Since this condition is always true, this statement keeps getting executed. We need to find a way to control this condition so that we can print the statement or execute this block of code a specific number of times instead of an infinite number of times. And to do that, we're going to be using a special variable called an iterator. Now before I explain what an iterator is or what exactly it does, let's try to modify this loop by using a variable. Let's say I make a variable called b and I set b to 3 and I add a pretty simple condition. While b is lesser than 5, we're going to keep printing this word hello. There's no difference between this and a previous code. I'm just using a variable over here, but this condition is still always going to be true and this word will always execute. We're just going to get another infinite loop. But let's say that inside this while loop, I add another statement. I add b is equal to b plus 1. Basically, I'm adding a statement to increase the value of b by 1 every single time I execute my block of code. Now when I run this program, you'll notice that we won't get another infinite loop. In fact, we'll print the word hello only 2 times. This variable b over here is acting as what's called the iterator. This variable b is acting like what's called an iterator. We'll try to understand exactly what an iterator does. To do that, we're going to use this simplified version of a while loop. The first block is the variable. I is the iterator. It's kind of like the variable b that we saw before. It's going to help change the condition and make sure that a loop only executes for a specific number of times and that we don't get an infinite loop. Next, we have the condition. Now we already know what a condition is. As long as this condition is true, this loop keeps getting executed. As long as this condition is true, the block of code keeps getting executed. And then we have the block of code. In this particular loop, I made my block of code pretty simple. I'm basically going to print the word true. I'm also going to change the value of I by 1. Every single time the block of code gets executed, the value of I is going to increase by 1. Now since we're updating the value of I, we often call this the update. And every loop has an update to make sure that the loop only continues for a specific number of times. To understand how an update and an iterator can help control the number of times we can use a loop, we're going to have to execute this loop manually. For now, let's imagine that this purple box represents the output window. After we declare the variable I and we give it the value 1, we're going to first start with the condition. The condition is going to check if I is lesser than or equal to 3. Since I is 1, we're basically checking if 1 is less than or equal to 3. 1 is not equal to 3, but it's less than 3. So this condition is going to be true. Since the condition is true, we're going to move on to the block of code. The first thing we're going to do in the block of code is we're going to print the word true. So we're going to print this word true in our output window as well. Then we're going to move on to the update. We're basically increasing the value of I by 1. So I is equal to I plus 1 is just going to increase I from 1 to 2. Then we're going to go back to our condition. Now you can notice that this order of moving from the condition to the block of code and back to the condition is the same thing that we've seen before. This is a lot more similar to a real loop. So now in our condition, we're checking again if I is less than or equal to 3. Only if this condition is true, we're going to move back to the block of code. I is currently 2. We're checking if 2 is less than or equal to 3. Since 2 is less than 3, this condition is true. And we can move on to the block of code again. First thing we're going to do is we're going to print the value 2. So in our output window, we're going to see a true one more time. Then you're going to move to the update. You're increasing the value of I by 1. So now I is going to increase from 2 to 3. Again, we completed the execution of the block of code. So we move back to the condition. Now we're going to check the condition again. We're going to check if 3 is less than or equal to 3. 3 is definitely not less than 3, but it is equal to 3. So this condition is again true. Like before, we again move on to the block of code, and now we're going to print the word true again. So we're going to get the word true on our output window one more time. We'll again increase the value of I by 1. So I would now become 4. We're going to go back to the condition and we're going to check the condition. We are now checking if 4 is less than or equal to 3. We're now checking if 4 is less than or equal to 3. This condition is obviously false. Like I've told you before, if the condition is false, we're not going to execute the block of code anymore. We'll just move on to the rest of the program. Or if we don't have anything else in our program, our execution ends. Now you notice that just by using this variable I and by changing the variable I in the block of code, I can control the number of times I execute a loop. Here our I was initially set to 1 and a condition continued till 3, and I was able to execute this loop and print the word true 3 times. So in this loop, the I equals 1 part is what we call the iterator, and the I is equal to I plus 1 part, what's changing the value of I, is called the update. These two things are what we can use to control any loop. Just try to understand that over here, our loop is going to execute 3 times, once when I is 1, the second time when I is 2, the third time when I is 3, and when I becomes 4, it's going to stop executing. So by setting I initially as 1, and by setting our condition accordingly, we can ensure that a loop executes exactly 3 times. Now we're going to use what we learned to write a program to print all numbers from 1 till 100. First, we'll create the basic structure of a while loop. We know that when we create a while loop, we'll need round brackets where we need to have a condition, and we'll need parentheses where we need to have a block of code. Here our block of code is pretty simple. We just need to print a number. Now, since our value of I keeps changing, we can just print the number I. For example, if I just write system.out.println I, where I is the iterator, when I is 1, it's gonna print 1. When I is 2, it's gonna print 2. And when I is 3, it's gonna print 3. As I keeps increasing or as I keeps changing, I can print the value of I. Now, we didn't create I yet. So we're gonna create a variable called I to function as an iterator. We'll make this of the int data type. So we'll just say int I is equal to 1. Now we already saw before that we need to always add an update to control the number of times I want to use a loop. I need to change this value of I so that at some point the condition will become false and the loop execution is going to end. So I need to add an update inside the block of code. Our update is pretty simple. We're just increasing the value of I by 1. Since I'm printing every number from 1 till 100, our update is just going to be I is equal to I plus 1. In the first iteration, I is going to be 1 and we're going to print the number 1. In the second iteration, I will become 2 and we can print the number 2. In the third iteration, I will become 3 and we can print the number 3. Now we need to be careful with the condition. We want to continue this loop till I is 100. When I becomes 101, our loop execution is going to end. So a condition is basically going to be while I is less than or equal to 100. And when I run this program, you're going to see that it's going to print all numbers from 1 till 100. Again, try to understand what's happening. Our I is initially initialized to 1. Our condition is ensuring that our values of I never exceed 100. And we'll have an update that's just increasing the value of I by 1. Initially, when I is 1, this condition is going to be checking if 1 is less than or equal to 100. The condition is obviously going to be true. So it's going to print the value of I. The value of I is 1, so it's just going to print 1. Then this update is going to increase the value of I to 2. Again, you're going to move back to the condition. You're going to check the condition again. 2 is less than 100. So this condition is again true. So we're again going to print the value of I. But now I is 2, so we're going to print the number 2. And we're going to keep doing this. We keep printing numbers till we reach 100. And that's exactly what we see over here. We start at 1 and we keep printing numbers till we reach 100. Now, let's say I change this condition to something that says I is less than 100. So in this case, what output can we expect? So we'll try to understand exactly what changed. We're not changing the value of I. We're not changing what value I is starting at. We're not changing the update of I. We're only changing the condition. Basically, we're affecting when the execution of the loop is going to end. So if you start at I is equal to 1, it's again going to check the condition. If 1 is less than 100, the condition is again going to be true. It's again going to print the number 1. And then it's going to increase it to 2 and it's going to keep repeating this. Now we'll see what happens when I is 99. Let's say we keep printing numbers till we reach 99. When I is 99, we're again going to increase the number from 99 to 100 and we're again going to check the condition. The condition is now checking if 100 is less than 100. The condition is obviously false, so we're not going to print I anymore. Our I is going to end up as 100, but we're only going to print values from 1 to 99. We can test that by just running this code. When I run this program, we're only going to see values from 1 till 99. We're not going to see 100. So you have to think of the condition. It's very important. Now let me actually add a println statement after this while loop. And let me just print the value of I. So we know that when I is 99, this statement is going to increase it to 100. And since it's 100, this condition will be false and this loop will stop executing. So the final value of I is actually going to be 100. Let me just remove this println statement and then let's run this program. When I run this program, you notice that I get the output as 100. The final value of I is going to be 100. You can also test this by adding an equals to again. Here our condition breaks when I is 101. So the final value of I must be 101. When I run this program, we do get 101 as our output. Now as you practice more programs using loops, they'll definitely get much easier. Just remember that in a while loop, if you want to control the number of times you want to execute something, you'll have to use an iterator, a proper condition, and an update. These three things are going to determine the number of times you're executing a loop. Now let's make a small change to this loop. Instead of using our update as I is equal to I plus 1, what if I change this to something else? What if I write it as I is equal to I plus 2? We have full freedom to control the update. Controlling the update just changes the output. Now previously we took it as I equals I plus 1, because we wanted to print every single value from 1 till 100. If this was our output window, we wanted to print every single value 1, 2, 3 and so on till 100. In this case, from one value to the next value, we are always increasing by 1. That's why we took our update as I is equal to I plus 1. But now I changed the update. I'm writing it as I is equal to I plus 2. Now what's going to happen? We're going to start with I is equal to 1 since that's what I initialized my I to. We're going to check the condition. 1 is definitely less than 100. So we're going to print the value of I first. We're going to print the number 1. After that, our I is going to increase to 1 plus 2. Our I is going to increase to 3. We're going to go back. We're going to check the condition again. 3 is less than 100. So we're going to continue into the block of code and we're going to print I. We're going to print the number 3. And then I is going to increment by 2 to become 5. Again, we're going to check the condition. 5 is less than 100 and we're going to execute the println statement and we're going to print the number 5. Every single time, we're going to keep increasing I by 2 because that's what my update does. And we're going to keep printing the number I. So I'm going to get 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 and so on. When I run this program, we'll get the exact same output. We're going to start at the number 1. We're going to continue to 3, 5, 7, 9, 11 and so on. Every value is going to increase by 2 to give us the next value. This is all because of the update. If I change the update again, maybe make it something like I is equal to I plus 5, our output is again going to change. Here, from one value to the next value, we're going to increase by 5. As our output also changes, you notice that the number of times we're printing something is going to decrease. Basically, we're approaching the 100 much faster. Here, if my update is increasing the value by 5, our output is going to change. Initially, I is 1. Next, it's going to be 1 plus 5, it's going to be 6. Then it's going to be 6 plus 5, it's going to be 11. And so on till you get to 100. Now, I just told you that the while loop is called an entry control loop. A do while loop is the exact opposite. It's called an exit control loop. To understand why, let's look at the simplified version of a do while loop. A do while loop keeps performing a particular block of code while a condition is true. It sounds the same as a while loop, but the terms are rearranged. In a while loop, we first started with the condition. We checked the condition. If the condition was true, only then we moved on to the block of code. In a do while loop, it's the opposite. We're going to start with the block of code. As you can see, we're going to first start with the block of code, and irrespective of the condition, we're going to execute this block of code. Then we're going to move on to the condition. If the condition was true, we're again going to move back to the block of code and execute it one more time. After we do this, we're again going to go back to the condition and we're going to check the condition again. Now, if the condition is false, we're not going to execute the block of code anymore. You notice that it's the same thing as a while loop, but the order is reversed. Here, our condition is controlling when we exit the loop. In a while loop, our condition controls when we enter the loop and if we enter the loop at all. This is why a do while loop is called an exit control loop and a while loop is called an entry control loop. The only difference between the two types of loops is the order of the process and the arrangement of the terms. In a while loop, the condition comes first and the block of code comes next. In a do while loop, the block of code comes first and then the condition is checked. Now we look at the syntax for a do while loop. Now, like the while loop, the do while loop has simple English syntax. To use the do while loop, we're going to use two keywords. We're using the do keyword and the while keyword. We're going to use the do keyword and we're going to add parentheses first. And after this, we're going to use the while keyword. Like I've just told you, the order is the reverse from the while loop. You're going to have your block of code first. And then you're going to have the condition in this while statement. Now let's just add a block of code and we'll add a condition and we'll see what happens. So I'll just add a block of code that just prints the word hi. And I'll add a simple condition, maybe something like 3 is greater than 5. Now this condition is obviously false. 3 is not greater than 5. So you would think that since the condition is false, this statement would not execute. But when I run this program, you notice that that statement does execute. This happens because our do while loop is an exit control loop. Like I've explained, the block of code gets executed irrespective of the condition. In this case, even though the condition is false, Java is going to start in the proper order. It's going to execute the block of code first, and then it's going to move on to the condition. Since this condition is false, it's not going to move back to the block of code, and it's going to move on to the rest of the program. But by then, because of this order, the block of code gets executed at least once, even though the condition is false. Now, if this condition was true on the other hand, maybe something like 3 is less than 5, when I run this program, you notice that I just get an infinite loop. It's gonna print this word hi, and after it prints the word hi, it's gonna go back to the condition. Since the condition is true, it's gonna move back to the println statement, and this process is gonna keep repeating. This is an infinite loop. Except the difference in the order of the terms, there's no big differences between the do while loop or the while loop. So you can use an iterator in a do while loop just like you did in a while loop. Just remember that the block of code and the condition are in the opposite order now. You're going to have the block of code first and the condition next. So if I want to write the same program to print all values from 1 to 100, I can do the same thing but just reverse the order. So I can first create the iterator I and set this to 1. I can add a println statement to print the value of I and increase the value of I by 1, and in my condition I can just make sure that I is less than or equal to 100. When I run this program, we're going to get all values from 1 till 100. It works the exact same way, but here our loop is an exit control loop, but a while loop is an entry control loop. And that's it. That's the basics of while loops and do while loops in Java. In the next video, we're going to be learning about for loops. Thank you for watching and have a great day.